I knew this was coming.
Profitability, right? India is still massively credit starved.
So I would certainly say for our portfolio this year was quite a breakthrough. EdTech and healthcare are going to be a need even 500 years from now. SaaS is dead, long live SaaS.
The need for security is just going to skyrocket. Yeah. Voice, vertical SaaS and democratization of AI, that's going to be a bloodbath.
Okay, so time for some crystal ball gazing. And I think next year we'll see a lot more companies beyond the 10-minute apps. There are a lot more mafias getting created, right?
We've had more LP interest at Prime kind of this year than perhaps the last 5, 7, 10 years, maybe even combined, right?
I am saying the 17th coming of Fintech.
Namaste. Welcome everyone to the Prime Venture Partners year-end podcast. We are here to share moments that gave us a lot of joy, some grief, and some moments that actually turned our hair gray, as you can see for all four of us. So I'm Brij, and I'm joined with my partners in crime, Amit, Shripati, and Sanjay.
We're your partners at Prime, by the way.
Partners in Prime, yes. Actually in crime and Prime both. So what we will be doing today is covering what happened in the last year, have a fun, candid, no holds barred conversation, and hopefully have a lot of insights along the way for our viewers. So we'll get started, and we'll start with what happened last year. So I'll start with Sanjay, you first, right? What is one standout moment from our portfolio that you like to share with the audience?
Hi, Bridge. I think I'll step back a little bit before I dive into the portfolio, if you don't mind. Broadly, it was sort of an interesting year where almost nothing happened, yet so much happened. And in some ways, I see it as a maturing of the Indian startup ecosystem and the landscape itself, where, when we all started out, 12, 14 years ago in the early days, it was sort of we were really romanticizing startups, really had no clue how they could solve problems, how technology was going to shape up. But a lot has happened over the last, 10, 12 years. And this year, it felt really like there's a coming of age of the ecosystem. One of the first things people would ask us, whether it was LPs or even we would ask ourselves, are where are exits going to show up from? And we broadly were building in an open loop sort of a manner, saying, good things will happen someday, let's figure it out. But if you look at what happened in 2023, 24, the last 12, 24 months, I think there's a clear sense that there is a goalpost, and if a company gets to this goalpost, it will be able to list itself on the Indian public markets and broadly get, between 20 and 50 times its EBITDA of the forward 12 months as its valuation. So if a company gets to $50 to $70 million of revenue at the low end and has a reasonable, unit economics and profitability, it could be a $700 million to $1 billion type of an IPO, right? So in many ways, that has been established several times in the past 18 months now. And there is a sense of confidence in the ecosystem that we know where we are headed and what we need to do to get to a solid outcome. So that, I think, at a macro level is one big thing that I felt has been solidified in 24. Coming to the portfolio, I guess there are two levels. One is the companies that are doing very well, that have broken out, that are now looking at these goalposts and saying, we need to be there over the next 12 months, 24 months. So we've seen one group of companies, and we'll talk about that in more detail as we go along. And then there are younger companies that are entering our portfolio since we invest at seed, and we have 2-3 really exciting investments. So that, I think, was, in some ways business as usual, but there are new themes, new products, new technologies coming in. And then the last part I would say is at a firm level itself at Prime, obviously you're coming on board, a couple of really exciting promotions in the team and new people coming up to speed. Yeah. New LP relationships as we've been going out looking at our next fund. So I think broadly, if I look at it from 3 areas here, the ecosystem, our existing portfolio as well as at our firm, lot of exciting new progress.
No, I think definitely this year has been remarkable. As you were just saying, that the IPO path is clear for all startups that are creating. And I remember when I was at Nexus 10 years back, one of the big questions used to be how will you generate returns for the investors? Right? What is the exit path? And as Sanjay, you mentioned, we used to talk about that if we do the process right and if the market matures, eventually it will show up. And I think 10, 12 years now, we are actually at that stage. Amit, is there anything else that you saw in the market broadly that you will want to share with our listeners around the broad themes, around what is changing in the market?
Yeah, I think Sanjay covered a few things. The quality of the entrepreneurs and the next generation of entrepreneurs is actually very, very exciting to see how that has evolved. And a lot of it is not necessarily second-time founders, although there are some of those ones as well. It's people that have worked at these other companies, right? You might have worked at a Zomato or a Runner or a Make My Trip or wherever, and Flipkart and so on, and you're now starting up because you saw some very exciting journey, right? So I think that is very, very heartening to see, right? Because an ecosystem, we're pretty young still, so the quality of the entrepreneurial talent definitely has gone up quite significantly. I would also say on the VC side, a lot more capital in 2024 compared to say 23 and certainly 2022, and a lot of mushrooming of sort of micro VCs and stuff like that, right? So I think at very, very early stage, almost pre-seed, conception stage, there's a lot more sources of capital. So those are a couple of interesting things beyond what Sanjay covered.
Absolutely. There are a lot more mafias getting created, right? The equivalent of PayPal mafia. So there are multiple companies where CXOs are exiting and starting companies. Shripati, what do you think? What's your big takeaway from the year gone by?
It is the mainstreaming of AI. So if you look at it, now in 2023, we used to see articles in newspapers and we used to excitedly talk about that I've gone ahead and put me a 4-day travel itinerary for Varanasi, and the fact that it could tell me where all to go. Now, just last week, my daughter was stuck in Amsterdam because her connection got messed up. And she said, look, I need to figure out, how to get, are they going to pay for something, the airline, what is the compensation, etc. So I said, okay, how are you going to figure that out? She said, yeah, I've already gone ahead and got the thing from ChatGPT on what to do and how much I'm entitled for, etc. So it has become very second nature from a consumer standpoint to now start interacting with AI and use it as an enabler. It's no more a talking point. We don't come to the office and say, hey, I did this, right? That's one. And then the second one is on the business side. I feel that the enterprises are moving gingerly but surely from pilots to production. We're beginning to see the initial stages of that. I think that it's going to be a much slower process than consumer, but we are beginning to see the initial stages of that. Of course, we can have a longer conversation about on the tech side how things are, dramatically changed between last year and this year. But I would say broadly, mainstreaming of AI would be the theme it sticks in my head.
Actually, I want to double click on what you just mentioned about what is actually happening on the tech landscape using AI, right? So is there anything that stood out from you in the last 1 year about Indian startups in the AI space?
Absolutely. I would say that Indian startups, entrepreneurs are as up to speed and as at the cutting edge of using AI as any other startup out there in the valley or elsewhere. So beginning to see entrepreneurs who are looking at Indian use cases of AI, where you're solving a problem which is specific to the Indian market. It doesn't mean it only is in India, but the nature of it is more specific, the way in which you're going to solve. And what that means is that the total surface area of things which you can solve with technology is increasing. Because these were things where technology was not possible for us to do these kind of things, right? But now with AI and the flexibility that it provides, it just opens up new vistas for us to address new problems. And that's what we began seeing.
I think, Shripati, you talked about AI. I think there were some other hot themes in the last 1 year. And I'll come to you, Sanjay, for one of the most hotly debated, talked about spaces, quick commerce. What's your thought? Is it a bubble? Is it hype? Or is it actually here to stay?
I think you're the expert on quick commerce, Brij.
He knew this was
I'm
coming.
going to make you put you on the spot here.
Oh, absolutely. I was prepared for
I
it.
would love to get your thoughts, given your
No, I
experience.
think like with everything in retail specifically, right? Anytime there is a shift in how things are delivered at the speed or the price or selection, there is obviously a need. So I remember reading about Jeff Bezos when I was starting Magic Pin, and one of the things he said is build for things that consumer will always want instead of what is likely to change. And he had this example of speed of delivery. Nobody's going to say, I need it slower, right? Similarly, nobody will say that I need it expensive or that I don't want as much options. So I think quick commerce has proven it. So if you deliver stuff that used to take 3 days in 10 minutes, consumers will love it. And so while there is a lot of jury out there in terms of whether they will ever become profitable, the economics, are they accounting for inventory costs correctly or not, the consumer behavior has definitely shifted. And when that shifts, it forces every incumbent to change the way they operate in the market. So no wonder Flipkart is launching Flipkart Minute, Amazon is launching Amazon Days, Reliance is thinking about it, Tata's is thinking about it, and you have Flipkart, you have Zomato, Zepto, and Swiggy anyways, right? Aggressively building out because that's where the future is. And if you can imagine 5 years from now, 10,000 dark stores. We are at about, I think, 2,500. At 10,000 dark stores, the amount of retail that will be happening through quick commerce is mind-blowing. And it is a humongous market. So I'm personally very excited about it. I think there are multiple opportunities.
Actually, one of the most interesting posts I saw from the founder of Zepto said when we started off 3 years ago, you could buy a kg of apples for 16 rupees. And today you can get an Apple iPhone 16 also delivered to you in 10 minutes.
10 minutes, yes.
Right,
Absolutely.
and that tells you also the range, right? Because initially it started off as, groceries, daily consumption things, but it has quickly moved into also the more expensive, product lines and so on. So it's not just serving the speed need, it's just become the way of doing commerce for people.
And Brij, if I may ask you to double click on this, since you talked about it a lot at Prime, that it's the end consumer facing thing is get this to me in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. But there is a enormous kind of, iceberg below the water in terms of supply chain, in terms of logistics, in terms of, so really the innovation that is happening is not just the, I'll get this to you in 10 minutes and you of course want everything faster. So maybe you can talk a little bit about, what that is.
Sure. So as you mentioned, Amit, this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? When I get something in 10 minutes, there is a lot of complexity behind actually delivering it in 10 minutes. So this is a complete shift in how supply chain is working on e-commerce or retail. 10 years back when we invested in delivery, when I was at Nexus, right? The thesis was that because of e-commerce, the traditional 3PL vendors will not be able to change to the new need of customers. And the new need was that customers will want things in 3 days instead of 10 days. And they'll want COD instead of prepaid. So suddenly you need a new supply chain to meet to that customer need. And I think similar thing is happening in quick commerce. Zepto, Blinkit, Instamart have all created their own networks. And like everything else, right, you start with fully integrated solutions. So I want to serve my customers. Quickly, it will scale to having common solutions that other platforms can also use. So I clearly foresee a world where there would be a common enabler system of dark stores, of 3PLs, right, that other platforms, including standalone brands, will want to use so that they can offer also a quick delivery experience for their customers. So I clearly see that happening, and I think there will be a lot of opportunities for startups to come in and create businesses that are catering to this common infrastructure.
Well, I have both a point of view and perhaps a question out there, because I feel that the number of players in this is a horizontal commerce platform, right? So let's look at the number of players here. You have Instamart, you have Blinkit, you have Zepto, Daze, and Minutes. Not counting.
Big Basket.
And Big Basket.
And Reliance.
And Reliance coming up,
yes,
right?
So you have 7 almost.
You have 7. And they're all well-funded. Correct? Everyone has raised a lot of money. Some of these other guys have tons of balance sheet money with which to play, etc. So I would think, with if I would go out on a limb, that it's going to be a bloodbath in the market with respect to margins, because I have already myself personally gone ahead and ordered from at least 3 of these players, actually 4. And it is really about And the reason that I shifted was not because I was wedded to one particular thing, it's just because I was looking for selection or something else came up on the notification. And these are all well-known brands. It's not like you have trust with one versus the other. So how do you see that playing out in 2025?
I think if you go back 10 years, Flipkart, Snapdeal, ShopClose, Amazon, and I forgot more players. And I mean, there is still bloodbath in that market. They are still not making money. But what happens is that you create a new consumer behavior. It allows a lot of supporting infrastructure and services and software companies to exist. So that wave of e-commerce created the delivery, a Shiprocket, right? And a Unicommerce. And these are three names that are coming top of my mind. I mean, this wave of commerce can also create another three similar companies. So there will be opportunities that I don't disagree with you. There will be bloodbath, and that's why it requires deep pocket, a lot of conviction, a lot of gumption to actually go out there and fight in this space. But it will be fun to watch it from the sidelines, right? But back companies that are actually servicing these customers.
Yep.
So I'll talk about SaaS also. Amit, actually, I wanted specifically your views because that's one space that has seen, at least from outside, a lot of challenges. Do you agree with that sentence, or do you think
Yeah.
still a lot of upside in the SaaS market?
Yeah, I think it's one of those, adages, right? SaaS is dead, long live SaaS, right? So software has been around for forever now, and I think it'll be around. I think I wanted to add one point to what Shripati said earlier about AI and the mainstreaming of AI. This is like any computer science revolution you take, right? From client server computing to mobile internet to edge computing. It's one of those, right? Like everybody has to go figure out what is your kind of AI story, right? And I think that is particularly true for the SaaS companies. I think just going and enabling some workflow or automation of some business process is not going to be good enough, right? That's very, very clear. That's also what the public markets are reflecting in terms of valuations, in terms of multiples, etc. That said, I think the need for having software to, solve customer problems, whether it's support, whether it's marketing, whether it is customer service, whether it is, whatever, it remains like, there for, it's going to remain for a while to come, right? So I think the thing that we think about at Prime is really, how do these SaaS companies get enabled with AI, with automation, with the new buzzword, agentic AI, etc., to really help me solve my business processes or solve my consumer problems or solve my customer problems, right? So I do think SaaS kind of circa 2020 or 2022, I think is going to have a tough time, right? If you're just building software. The second point related to what Shripati said earlier about AI, a lot of our AI companies, in particular, one comes to mind, Neo and others, have done a phenomenal job of how they use AI just to up-level themselves, irrespective of necessarily what you're offering to the consumer or the customer, right? So whether it is on marketing or it's on dev or dev tools or automation or customer support, etc. So I think there'll be a lot of opportunities to help companies adopt AI for themselves, even if they don't necessarily bring it out there, right? So I think SaaS plus AI is going to be here to stay.
Got it. So you remain excited and bullish about the SaaS plus AI combination.
That's right.
Maybe I can make a couple of other points there, which is that the size of the company required to build a SaaS company is going to come down. Yeah. So because I feel that the productivity of the what is the most when you're starting a SaaS company, the 0 to 1 journey is a very hard journey. Everyone says it's a very hard journey. For that, you need to assemble a right team from a tech side, and you need to actually, after you have got a PM, some semblance of PMF, you need to go and sell it. You can go outside and sell it, and have a motion for lead gen, qualification, SDR, marketing qualified lead, sales qualified lead, all those kind of things. I feel that AI is going to play a very big role in reducing the headcount required to make those things happen.
And does reduce the time to market.
Reduce the time to market, reduce the amount of money required, and make it faster to actually go to this initial ramp. So we will see a lot more companies, in my opinion, with 3-4 engineers/business people who are having in the first year $1 to $2 million ARR. I think that's what we are going to start seeing in 2025 on these SaaS companies. I think that's going to be exciting. I'm not necessarily extrapolating it to the 1 to 10 journey, because I think that when you want to actually become bigger, it's back to the future. All the things which mattered will continue to matter.
yeah.
You need to understand go-to-market. You need to understand unit economics. You need to understand churn, retention, all of those things.
I wanted to add one very important note of caution for entrepreneurs itself, right? Because a lot of time, the initial success, this 1 to 2 million that you're going to get, since every enterprise has got some sort of an AI budget,
Yes.
right? It might be coming out of that versus saying, I have decided that I need to adopt AI in the mainstream.
Got it. Yeah.
And, I'm going to do a pilot, right? So if the pilot is successful, is the customer committed to mainstreaming this or not is the most important question to ask. And frankly, the $1 to $2 million are not as important as the fact that you have customers who are planning to mainstream this solution after a successful pilot.
And not just an experimental AI budget because
Correct.
I want to check mark that we are doing AI. Yeah. No, absolutely true.
Because for the customer, even the fact that it doesn't work is also data, useful information, right? So spending $1 million, $500,000 to find out that this is not for us or not yet ready for us is itself valuable. Right. But for that startup, it might be, it might kill the company.
So Sanjay, that's a good segue because I want to talk about a space that is close to your heart. And you've been at it for decades in some ways, right? Fintech.
Before the space started.
Yes, before this space started, Fintech, it was not called Fintech, I believe. It just be usually called financial services or whatever else, right? But again, that's another space that people are sort of doubting whether it is a space that is still something left or is it old-fashioned, traditional anda that people were building and no longer there is opportunity for VCs to invest in. Do you have a differing view or do you agree with this? What are your thoughts?
I think in India, over the foreseeable future, fintech is going to be kind of like the proverbial Akshay Patra, the gift that keeps on giving. There is still infinite opportunity here, right? If anything, the regulator getting more actively involved, and if you saw the initial speech by the new RBI governor as well in terms of the role of technology and the importance of fintechs, I think what has happened is in the early days it was sort of like the Wild West, right? You could do whatever, nobody knew you existed, nobody cared about it, you were still a small piece. I think with a lot of the focus on bringing it into the regulatory umbrella in a more formal manner, the regulator has basically said, you are now a first-class citizen, right? It comes with certain responsibilities, it comes with certain restrictions, because I also need to make sure that we are protecting the consumer, protecting the small business, but you are actually legit, right? And in order to be legit, there are certain things that need to be done. You need to partner with regulated entities, ideally become a regulated entity. I think this whole space of, India is still massively credit-starved at all levels, right? You can think of, we have several companies, whether it's a Finag or a Nabdhan or a Metafin or a Freo operating in this space. And in all of those spaces, there is never going to be a winner takes all, and there can be several large companies, right? Not to mention the opportunity for the incumbents. Some of the incumbents will do things themselves, and several will partner with the fintechs in order to achieve their goals, right? Also knowing that these are not businesses that can be built overnight, right? So money is not a weapon, money is a tool in these businesses, right? And also there is no concept of a gray area in this business. If it's not white, you have to assume it's black, and you can't do it, right? So if you stay within the lanes, which now that the highways have been built and the lanes are marked, it doesn't make sense to drive on the shoulder to get a little faster. You have to follow the rules. But if you do, there are huge pots of gold here, right? Huge profit pools. And so we remain absolutely excited about this space. There is a second category that has emerged, and we have a company called Night Fintech, which is one of the companies. EasyTap also kind of started in that space, which is tech enabling the incumbents, right? So on the one hand, you have the new financial services / fintech companies that are the service providers. They are the customer-facing brand. They may be working at the back end or in partnership with the larger regulated entities. But there's going to be a huge opportunity because the large players are also going to enter these spaces, and they need to retool, right? And so whether it's their lending infrastructure, whether it's their, maybe not the core banking infrastructure, that might be too much of a change, but all of the, surrounding systems around there, And if the first wave was getting these into, cloud-based, SaaS-based solutions, now whatever we are seeing in enterprise with AI is going to play a huge role here as well. Because at the end of the day, financial institutions are large enterprises, right? There are regulatory constraints that may make the adoption little more. I mean, there are ethical issues of, decisioning on giving somebody on creditworthiness and so on that have to be thought of. But all the scaffolding around customer service and things like that, huge opportunities immediately, right? So we remain super interested and excited about this space, and will continue to back companies.
It's almost a regulatory capture, increases the cost of starting up companies, and there will be less companies trying out things on the edges, like as you just mentioned. Do you think that's likely to happen, or is it more clarifying with the new RBI stances that this is what you need to do and this is what you should not do? And does it will not affect the pace of innovation and the pace of startup creation in this space?
So, look, I think you can look at the glass as half full or half empty, right? In all these situations, right? The fact that there are rules to follow um, is a non-negotiable thing here, right? So, try to stay within the rules and and build what you can. There are still large opportunities and large problems to solve. I think that should be the motivation
That
for
should be the
entrepreneurs.
Let's add one thing which I've actually really learned from Sanjay in our internal discussions is that as entrepreneurs, try to understand and poke and really internalize what is the spirit of the regulation rather than the letter of the regulation. And that is an important thing. What we have seen the best fintech entrepreneurs do is they are grasping that and building the business around
that. Sure.
So then what happens is that the incremental regulations which typically come from RBI is when somebody has put an end around it. And so then they have to bring in a new regulation to say, hey, look, no, you cannot actually do those kind of things, like doing credit in a certain way where it is not meant to be, etc.
On that note, let's switch some gears. So, and now I want to talk about the three of you specifically from your perspective of being board members. But I'll start on the positive notes, and Amit, with you. What has been the one instance in the last 1 year where you have seen in one of your companies and that made you think that this is why I do this job? This is why I love doing this job.
Yeah, I would say across the portfolio, I mean, there are several. Obviously, the biggest one that comes to mind is Dozee, which is one of our portfolio companies, which is really about saving lives and getting to this notion of zero code blues. So wherever they're deployed, you don't get any sort of inadvertent code blues or deaths or whatever, right? I mean, that is beyond anything else that you can imagine as being in sort of venture capital. I would also say there are other examples. For example, a company of ours called PlanetSpark, which is in the EdTech space, where you get young 8-year-old, 9-year-old doing TEDx talks, right? I don't think everybody here is very well represented. I don't think any of us have done a TED or a TEDx talk yet, or maybe somebody has. And this is from somebody who started with relatively very modest kind of communication skills from tier 2, tier 3 India, right? So Wheelseye is another example of a company that is the backbone of logistics in the country, and people see it everywhere. And if you ever happen to mention that we're investors in Wheelseye, they're like, "What? You guys are in Wheelseye? I didn't know that." So I would really say the impact that these companies are making, that would be one that across many, I've just picked a few examples, but across many, that really makes you feel like this is worth it.
Oh, I had the Wheelseye moment last week when I met someone. He said, "Oh, you are an investor in Wheelseye." Everyone has sort of experienced that product, right? But
Yeah.
it's incredible what they have done. And Sanjay, coming to you.
And actually, I was going to ask Shripati, maybe we can talk a little bit about quizzes as AI and some of the really exciting stuff that you've been seeing closely.
Yeah, it is. One of the things which Quizzes does is it enables teachers to do assessments, right? That's how it started. Now it has, of course, become a much more core tool which teachers use across the journey. And it is really gratifying to see how the use of AI has dramatically expanded the utility by both teachers and students. And one of the use cases which Quizzes has is called accommodations. And accommodations refers to how a single question paper can be changed for needs of students who might have differing needs. So, for example, there is a student who has attention deficit, right? That student probably needs a little bit more time, needs 15 extra minutes or 20 extra minutes to do the problem. Or there might be a student who is at a slightly slower pace of learning, but will do equally well if they are provided one extra hint on how to actually do the problem. These are all called accommodations, and there are 20, 30 different types of accommodations. How do you do that in real time with an assessment, right? It's things which are just not possible. And things like this make the lives of students very difficult. It makes learning a very different exercise from being completely overwhelmed to actually enjoying it. And for teachers, it gives a much greater sense of making a difference, right? So these are the things which companies do. And having just the privilege of being part of these companies, you actually see this.
So in keeping with the similar theme, right, obviously Dozee, we can talk for an hour on some of the exciting things that they've been doing. Another company which is a new addition to our portfolio is a company called MetaFin. It does rooftop solar installation and financing. It's an NBFC for small SMEs in rural India, right? And think of a classic example here is an atta chakki in Uttar Pradesh, where there's like a little flour mill pretty much attached to the house of the family, and it runs on diesel, right? If at all there is a grid there, that grid brings lighting probably at night, but there is really no power to run the motor consistently, right? And today, MetaFin has about 2,000 installations where it goes ahead and helps replace diesel, which is a high pollutant, very expensive, costs keep rising, with a silent rooftop solar. It's really replacing diesel to solar, right? It's not like you're charging a battery and with power which is also generated with fossil fuel. This is truly going green. And not only that, the cost of the EMI is pretty much the cost of the diesel or even less as diesel keeps going up. You only pay it for 3 to 4 years and then you own this thing. You may pay an AMC after this, so then they'll give you 25 years of power. Your kids are not inhaling that diesel exhaust. It's turned out that many of them have actually been able to even lower the cost of their product because they're getting much better margins. People are talking about how this has enabled me to send my children to college, how it has enabled me to marry off my daughters, or so some of the small testimonials we've started to get. It's a very young company, right? So again, very as you say, what makes you feel this is why I do this. I think financial success in startups and in venture capital are always an outcome. Yes, that is sort of the metric on which we are going to be measured, and all of us can, with above average luck or with average luck, will do well. But it really feels very good when you see at the end of 10 years of putting in an effort here that a company that is not just transforming people's lives and livelihoods is the reason why you achieved your financial success. And I think we have really been privileged in several companies in our portfolio where, yes, it seems like it's a convenience that it's solving or it's a core need that it's solving, but it's really making people's lives better.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's true. And that's a great place to also talk about more companies that we have invested in the last 1 year, right? Amit, if you want to share some of the other examples that we've invested in, some tidbits about what made us invest in those companies last year.
Sure. So I'll take a couple of examples. So some that are close, some that aren't. So I'll keep it a little cryptic. So the intersection of AI with various verticals, right? One that you led or co-led, which is basically AI on the shop floor in a manufacturing setup. In fact, I was going to make that point earlier about AI, which is that customers are not saying, show me more AI. Maybe somebody, CXO, CPO, somebody in a boardroom has to put a slide so the CEO and the board is okay. But really they're saying, I have these problems, solve these problems, right? So I think that was a very exciting company, which is basically saying, how do you help me improve my manufacturing process, quality, quotient, leveraging, whatever you want to leverage, right? So they're using vision and AI. Another one is in the legal tech space, which is saying that as I invest a lot in legal tech, particularly in the IP domain, contracts, negotiations, IP assessments, etc., can I make that process a lot more effective and efficient for the IP attorney, for the inventor, for the interactions with patent offices, for reviewing portfolio assessment when I'm doing M&A and so on. That's another one. And then perhaps maybe just one more, which is in the cross-border space, which is in the B2B space. Thanks to this big kind of China plus one wave, over the next 7 years, we think exports are going to double or triple from here on out, right? Thanks to everybody all over the world, and certainly out west, looking for a China plus one strategy, right? So this is a company called Alchemy in the B2B chemical space, but I think this could be an interesting area for a variety of other verticals as well. So these are a few examples of the kinds of companies that we've looked at this year, or rather back this year.
Shripati, I'll ask you the counter of this, or opposite question of this, which is, what would you have liked to see more of?
I'd like to see more of in 2024.
Yes.
I would have liked to see actually from India more infrastructure AI companies. I think there's an opportunity here where a lot of spend is going to happen for obvious reasons, because this is a very fundamental shift in computing. Our data centers are going to be rethought. You're seeing the success of NVIDIA, as in every single data center server is going to actually look different, because compute is basically going to go to AI workloads now versus the traditional workloads and so forth. So I hope we see more infrastructure companies. And infrastructure just doesn't mean actually doing LLMs. I don't think that's a game that we necessarily need to play, which is a very high capex kind of game. But one example of an area where infrastructure will be required is, let's say, in security. So let's look at, because what's going to happen is that the essentially folks who are trying to do the attack here now have something as powerful as AI in their hands. So you can expect several things to happen in that space, which is that the attacks are going to become more frequent, they're going to become more powerful and more sophisticated. And once they actually enter a system, the rate at which they can export data is going to be faster. It's not going to be weeks, it's going to be hours in which they can do. So all of these things now lead to a situation where the need for security is just going to skyrocket, because every enterprise is going to be very, very concerned. And in fact, they would want to do this before they put any AI inside their enterprise, right? They would want to have, and fintech is one such area where it is absolutely paramount. So I feel that there are opportunities here. And I'm really hoping that in 2025, we start seeing the innovative stuff there. And the thing to watch out for is that when we are looking at infrastructure, we have to be competing with the best that the Valley has to offer. We have to be competing at that level. I think we do have the talent, absolutely, to do it. And hopefully, I'm excited about what's seeing on that.
On the same level of excitement, I'd like to end this section specifically by asking each one of you individually to share one anecdote of our portfolio company that has truly shown in the last year. Right? And they've done a remarkable job. One anecdote each. And please give us some more color on what made that company stand out in the last one. And I'll start with you, Sanjay.
All right, so I'm actually going to use the same example across 3 companies, which is profitability, right, at scale. Right? So 3 of our companies sort of broke through to the other side in a stable, configurable, consistent manner. And I think that the first one, of course, has talked about it publicly, is MyGate. Now actually seeing pretty strong momentum with the combination of advertising revenue, SaaS revenue that is starting to come back, as well as some new innovative products they've launched, the MyGate locks, and more to come in that category. I think there, what has happened is it's clearly the segment leader, the category creator, and the category leader and / owner, I would say. And I think real focus on basics, right? What got us here, what made us successful in the beginning, and really being laser focused on the customer requirements, ensuring, all the questions around data privacy and security which were always answered, they're more, well communicated to people, so they understand, that their information is safe and so on. And just very clear communication, both externally as well as within the organization. And the path ahead as well looks really exciting. So we're super excited about where this company is. And in a similar vein, we had Freo in the consumer lending space. Again, it's at sizable heft now, and really stayed laser focused on profitable unit economics. And I think that is a very large space. There are several players there, but the opportunity space is humongous. Everybody has their own approach to the market, and Freo has really demonstrated extraordinary discipline in everything around, because the biggest thing that can kill you here is CAC, and of course NPAs, and having like a vehicle, an engine where you can acquire customers at a for a very low cost, get the right customers to come up the ladder and actually start borrowing from you, and making sure your NPAs are in control, and make that sort of a repeatable engine that can be scaled. I think they've demonstrated that level of maturity now in the business. And the third one Amit talked about is PlanetSpark, again in the education space. I know everybody still has questions of, is EdTech a good opportunity or not? I think we're kind of past that now. I think people are starting to realize that it was probably one very, very large rotten apple that they were drawing some lessons from, unfortunately. But now I think there's a lot more confidence. And PlanetSpark, again, the founders have talked about this, shared their video quite openly as well, doing 125 crores of revenue, profitable, scaling. We're super excited. I think this is a theme. And for us as a VC, when I see a similar situation in another company, while it's not ideal, it doesn't scare us anymore, right? We are saying, okay, there is a path out of this, and it's going to take A, B, and C, and it's going to be 6 to 9 months, maybe 12 months. But, we can tell with conviction to the founders now that, hey, let's put the plan together. And we're seeing another company that's sort of in that phase that is coming out of it now. So I think to me, that has been the most reassuring.
What about you, Amit? Any of the companies that have stood out?
Yeah, so I'll pick a theme rather than a company, although I'll mention a company as well, which is, I think one of the modes we have realized of companies that go from good to great or great to awesome is ability to build the software, which is not code, which is the team, right? So investing in high quality leadership team, grooming the leadership team, being open to executive coaching, taking executive coaching, etc. So I would certainly say for our portfolio this year was quite a breakthrough, at least on the last element, that I think there are at least maybe 6 or 7, I've lost track now, maybe 8 companies where the founders are seeking kind of external counsel help, right? And say, look, it doesn't matter, even a Gukesh needs, coaching from Paddy Upton or Vishwanathan Anand or what have you, right? So I would say, sir, and different, strokes for different folks. But for example, Wheelza has done a lot of investing in the leadership team, right? Bunch of other founders have done a lot around getting more self-aware on, what are perhaps their limiting or empowering beliefs and how do you kind of supercharge that. So I would say investing in that software was definitely one of the highlights for me personally.
That's a great sign of a maturing ecosystem. I mean, now we are thinking 10 years hence, right?
Absolutely.
So if we have to, then our team needs to be as equipped as the quality of the code or the quality of the GTM. So I think that's a very
right. And in an AI world, like Shripati said, you're going to have fewer people, right? You have lesser engineers, lesser marketeers, lesser, whatever. Now it becomes even more important, what your right brain is going to do, not just your, left brain, and how do you kind of marry that, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, even Djokovic has Murray as a coach now.
Absolutely.
Shripati, what about you? What do you think?
I think that what Sanjay and Amit's team said on my side, in addition to those two, I was really excited to see a couple of companies actually establish themselves as leaders in spaces where it is sort of difficult to do so. One, I'll come back to quizzes where EdTech was essentially, or is essentially, an area most and number one candidate for disruption by AI. Right, in 2023, it is the number one candidate. And one of the things which the team set out to do is say that, hey, this thing is coming. We are going to understand it. We are going to really focus on it. And our goal is to make this a thought leader in EdTech over the next year. And what I'm glad to say is that now teachers, when they're talking about EdTech and AI, actually first mention quizzes. So that requires a lot of work. It requires org building. It requires understanding the technology as well as spending very prudently to make that happen. So it's really satisfying to see that. And I feel that all companies will need to start thinking in that way, right? When you're at the forefront of being disrupted, to actually how be a leader in that way. Like in one sense, run to your confrontation and tackle it in a way which is on your terms versus having confrontation come to you. The second one I would say, which I'm really delighted about, is a company in our portfolio called HitWicket, which is a gaming company, as the name indicates, a cricket strategy game. And it is an area where we haven't seen any leaders in India. But I firmly believe that we are going to get a clash of clans out of India. There's absolutely no reason. We have the data ubiquitous, lowest price, mobile phones ubiquitous, smartphones ubiquitous, young population, like everything points towards creating a leader in gaming. And I feel that it was a breakout year for HitWicket in terms of their user growth, revenues, unit economics, all of the above. So just excited about just companies sort of breaking out in new categories.
Okay, so time for some crystal ball gazing and sneak peek, right? So I'll start with you, Amit, on what's one trend or sector that you are most excited about in 2025?
I'm assuming AI will be common to everyone, so I won't do that. So the third coming of EdTech.
Third coming of EdTech?
Third coming of EdTech. And I feel like, EdTech and healthcare are going to be a need even 500 years from now. Yeah, we've had two innings, some with somewhat, checkered past, but obviously a lot of impact. That there is 100 million people that have gone through a variety of, I'm just talking about India, right? Not talking about global. Right? If you go into global, like, then a lot more. Just in India, which is such a dire need, right? We have such a lack of quality teachers, quality infrastructure, access, inclusion that you talked about in a variety of themes. So I think the need is there. I think the appetite to pay is there. I think we need kind of both the current and the next gen of entrepreneurs to be able to serve it, leveraging tech, leveraging AI, leveraging product, etc. So I think that I'm going to stick my neck out and say the third coming of EdTech.
Yeah. And I think there is now enough proof points of demonstrably sustainable business models in EdTech, right? Which was not the case a couple of years back.
Absolutely. And a lot more awareness, right? No different than, when the mobility revolution, whether it's taxis or whether it's e-commerce revolution. So, quick commerce is much easier to pull off once everybody knows that I can do commerce, right? I can do Flipkart, Myntra, Amazon. So I'm like, oh, of course, I can do this. So now people are aware, like, look, I can take a course online and get better employed or up-level my skills or what have you. So yeah.
Shripati, what are you most excited about in 2025?
I would say voice, vertical SaaS, and democratization of AI to actually reach, which makes tech accessible to as many people as possible. So just to pass that a little bit, I feel that the opportunity set in vertical AI, where you are actually solving a problem, like earlier Amit mentioned, in manufacturing a deal which you co-led, where you are not only just solving the problem for that manufacturing customer, but you are so integrated with their workflows, their core needs, their business problems, and providing a compelling ROI. Right? Those will be the themes which we feel we'll see more of. I'm really excited. And what is going to enable that is the ubiquity of voice, because now with the tech is being that advanced, I feel that voice will become mainstream, and our ability to interact with software and technology over voice, which is a natural voice for us, will be a very powerful strand. And it's going to ultimately make tech and software accessible to more and more people. You don't need to understand graphical user interfaces. You don't need to understand English to actually do this. And that's really exciting.
That's truly democratization of computing, right? Yeah, eventually everyone will have access to it in the natural interface, the most natural interface one can think of. Got it. So
What about you, Brij? Before you ask me.
I'm actually going to ask you a different question, not about the future. Can I ask you that first? Then I'll come to what I have to
Sure.
say. So I want to ask you to give us a sneak peek of what has 2025 in store from Prime and Partners perspective.
So as Amit said, third coming of EdTech. I'm saying the 17th coming of Fintech. That's going to be there for sure. Um, I think one area that we have alluded to in the context of Dozee, perhaps, is I think this whole IoT with AI is going to be extraordinarily exciting as well. So I'm looking to certainly see potentially even working with some young entrepreneurs and incubating some new concepts, as just to see how far that could take us as well. And yeah, I think those are broadly the areas that we'd be looking to do more stuff in. A lot of the stuff is business as usual, but I think a lot of this stuff is where the excitement is going to be. And, I couldn't be more excited about the opportunity ahead.
Oh, absolutely. So I will spend a couple of minutes and talk about what I foresee. So I think Amit and Shripati and you have already talked about it, but I'll just summarize in how I am thinking about 2025. So there are two things that I was supremely excited about. One of them is AI, especially integrated AI created to solve a problem. Not a platform, but a problem solution that customers can use and see immediate ROI. And second is I have always been bullish on retail. So I just see that with quick commerce, enablement, and just the fact that now millions of Indian consumers can truly experience what fast, high quality commerce means. So I remain excited about that space as well. And I think next year we'll see a lot more companies beyond the 10-minute apps come out and create value. So I have finished my cup of coffee, but I would love
I have to say one more thing. I'm going to take a vote here. Right? Last year I was in that seat. This year you're in this seat. I propose that you keep that role for the next several years. Because you did a bang-up job of it. Any objections, Amit and Shripati?
Not at all.
No, no, I think that.
So then I will use that Pito and ask you one more question before I close. Okay. So
But
that is
I
it.
do want to comment on something, right? This is probably the first time we have not talked about payments, right? UPI has just become so taken for granted.
People are assuming.
Right?
It's assumed.
It is ridiculous that we just don't think about it anymore as even an accomplishment, because it has just become, it's like breathing right now, right? It's so mainstream. In fact, breathing is probably not as taken for granted, unfortunately, these days. But it's really amazing to see the infrastructure that we have in India, the DPI, which is the envy of the whole world. But it stays at the foundation of several of the things that we have done, and it's really the enabler. So really happy to see how that has just become mainstream across the board.
No, actually, I was about to ask that only, not payments, but broadly, what has remained the same and what do you think will remain the same next year? So one is payments. I guess it's so ubiquitous that it will remain what it is. But Shripati, Amit, anything else that you see that is not changing and should not change?
Yeah, I'm going to go on a little tangent and come back because I wanted to say this. Yeah, perhaps closing remarks, right? I think just the maturity and the quality of the entrepreneurs, which I mentioned earlier, both the next gen and this, and the level of LP interest for India. We've had more LP interest at Prime kind of this year than perhaps the last, 5, 7, 10 years, maybe even combined, right? So I think we're very high quality investors backing India, and a lot and very sort of privileged position, like we said earlier, to be working with high quality entrepreneurs who are really trying to kind of change the world, make a dent in the universe, and so on, right? I think in terms of what remains unchanged, I think consumer appetite remains unchanged. In fact, only increasing, right? Like in a positive way, right? So in that's a name, I don't know if you call it unchanged or not. I think the demographic dividend remains unchanged, right? Only growing. So we'll be the country with the highest sort of working population for years, decades to come, right? Till 2047 when the country turns 100 in terms of independent India. So yeah, I think the betting on the talent and the people and the consumption just domestically, which will I think keep us more insulated from the vagaries of the sort of geopolitical world.
Absolutely. And anything from you, Shripati? Any closing remarks?
I'll say that in one sense, the more things change, the more things remain the same. And the focus on creating a company requires all these nuts and bolts things, which is, building an org, having belief in a problem which you're trying to solve, and actually having the resistance, the grit and the persistence to go ahead and build that company. And in the talk of all this AI and everything else, you might forget that because the technology, you can fall in love with it. But if you're not solving a real pain point, which you're passionate about solving, it's not going to work, right? So I feel that the opportunity set is dramatically increased. That is really, really exciting because now technology can reach more people more cost effectively in a more compelling fashion. And we have that opportunity to do that in India today.
Well, so that is it for our year-end podcast. Thank you, Sanjay, Shripati, and Amit for sharing your thoughts. And thank you, listeners, for being part of the show. And we'll see you in the new year with our first episode coming up in January. And so look forward to you on the other side of the new year. Thank you so much.
Dear listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast app for free, and you'll be the first one to know when new episodes are available. Just search for Prime Venture Partners Podcast in Apple Podcast, Spotify, Castbox, or however you get your podcasts. Then hit subscribe. And if you have enjoyed the show, we would be really grateful if you leave us a review on Apple Podcast. To read the full transcript, find the link in the show notes.